The following program is a production of Hawaii, Kauai Community Media. Island Alert was made possible in part by the Kauai Island Utility Cooperative.
Aloha folks, Max here. For this month's episode, I had the privilege of interviewing Elton Ushio from KEMA. We had a really great chat, and in fact, the information we got was so useful and so thorough, I had to split the episode into two parts. So stay tuned for part one right now, and keep your eyes peeled for part two next month. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy. Aloha, and welcome to Island Alert, the show where we get to know Kauai's first responders. I'm Max Richardson.
And I'm Elton Ushio. I'm the Emergency Management Administrator for the County of Kauai.
And today's episode is all about the Kauai Emergency Management Agency, better known as KEMA. But before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and follow Hawaii on YouTube for more great content. Stay informed, stay inspired, and stay connected with the stories that matter most on Kauai. All right, so before we get into the nitty-gritty questions, I usually like to do a little getting to know you. So why don't you introduce yourself? I mean, how did you end up becoming the head of Kauai's Emergency Management Agency? What is the path from being a normal kid to running the whole emergency command center for the whole county? What does that look like?
Wow. Okay, well, I was born and raised here on Kauai. Grew up right here in Lihui, just a stone's throw away in nearby subdivision. Growing up, very active outdoor lifestyle, doing things that a lot of normal local children do. Fishing, diving, hunting, martial arts, what have you. At some point, got involved in scouting. And went on through high school here at Kauai High School, University of Hawaii at Manoa, graduated and came home. I was working for a local nonprofit as their director of community and senior services. This is Kauai Economic Opportunity, Inc., when the hurricane hit. And soon afterwards, opportunity to move over to the County of Kauai came about, where disaster relief grant for hurricane recovery was made available. So I moved to the county to manage that. Spent a number of years with the host agency, the Area Agency on Aging, or AEA, with the County of Kauai. And in the years following 9/11, opportunity came up, and I found that, hey, I can do pretty cool stuff and meaningful stuff. Although, working with senior programs was very meaningful, I made the jump. And in 2003, I moved to KEMA. Then again, KCDA, or Kauai Civil Defense Agency. From there, I served in my grant role as their grant manager, eventually becoming the plans and operations officer, and then moving up to administrator over the years. Became administrator in 2015.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
That sounds like that's quite the varied career. And that's interesting. I would have had a lot of guesses how you would answer that question, but starting in elderly affairs or the agency on aging would not have been near the top of the list of guesses.
Yeah, you might find it very interesting that, the field of emergency management is a area of study in colleges and universities is relatively new. So now you have people graduating with degrees in Homeland Security and emergency management and what have you, but just a few years ago, not very available. And if you were to look at the current administrators in emergency management statewide, very capable people, but our state administrator at HAIMA is a retired Army colonel. City and County of Honolulu, prior administrator, Hiro Toya, he has a background in public health.
Okay.
So various backgrounds, but many people would be interested to know that the spectrum of emergency management encompasses all kinds of different fields or career paths because we actually do work in this whole community of various professions, governmental, non-governmental, private sector, community-based, that all have a nexus to emergency management.
All right. Cool. That was a very thorough answer. Thank you. That's an interesting background. All right. Let's get into the nuts and bolts questions here. What, in your opinion, what would you say are the biggest natural disaster risks that face Kauai, and how does your agency prepare for them?
Okay, so we do have various threats and hazards that we have to prepare for. We take a all hazards approach. But let me start. I'm going to slightly redirect, but I will come back to your question. I think the viewing audience would benefit from knowing how we exist and why we exist. Prior generations, or some of your viewers may remember us as the Civil Defense Agency or Kauai Civil Defense Agency. We exist for Kauai in KEMA or Kauai Emergency Management Agency under Mayor Kawakami's able leadership. So the mayor is the head of emergency management at the county levels. I am the administrator. I do the day-to-day administrative things. But like with many other things that the county does, mayor's in charge, and he's a great leader. So moving on as far as the threats. To summarize in a nutshell what KEMA does, let's go to our mission statement, and that is to protect lives and property in the County of Kauai by coordinating and integrating efforts among all levels of government and the private sector to mitigate against, prepare for, respond to, and recover from natural disasters, acts of terrorism, and other threats and hazards. And we do this via our vision of striving to actively promote, enhance a whole community preparedness and resilience and safety in the face of numerous threats, hazards, and disasters that can potentially affect our island communities. Now, you had asked about potential hazards, natural disasters. So let me start with those. First and foremost on many people's mind are tropical cyclones or hurricanes. Kauai is no stranger to that. Some of your viewers may recall back in the day, Hurricane Dot, as well as Hurricanes Eva and Iniki. And, several others that threatened but didn't directly impact, though maybe Hurricane Lane may be on people's minds because although that one missed us by a considerable margin, the heavy rains, torrential rainfall created flooding that almost rivaled earlier that year when we had that record-setting 2018 rain bomb, that set the national rainfall record. So, tropical cyclones are definitely one of the areas we're concerned about. In addition to that, we have other threats such as tsunami. So again, those are difficult to predict, and knock on wood, but we are overdue for destructive Pacific-wide tsunami, knock on wood. But we've had many scares in recent years and always preparing for those, planning ahead, doing whatever we can on the front end. We can also add heavy rain events, which result in inland flooding, potential roadway closures, landslides, impacts to infrastructure.
We've had a little bit of that recently, I think.
Yeah, April of this year, we had a pretty significant rainfall event. But Kauai can be said as a hub for significant rainfall events. I mean, we have Mount Waialeale, our central mountain, as one of the wettest spots on Earth. Our 2018 event that affected much of the island with 49.69 inches of rain did set an all-time United States 24-hour rainfall record. Less known to maybe Kauai residents is that way back in the day when Hurricane Hiki in the 1950s affected Kauai, a rain gauge at the ranger station in Koke'e recorded the rainfall, and that was a long-standing all United States tropical cyclone rainfall record.
Wow.
That was only surpassed by Hurricane Harvey in Texas, and then in 2018 by Hurricane Lane with the torrential rainfall that brought here and statewide. So Kauai is no stranger to heavy rainfall, but you know that doesn't mean that you know people don't need to be aware and prepared for such things because 2018 was a event that wasn't predicted. Um, Many times, Weather Service will tell us days in advance that a front is coming. They expect this kind of system, these kind of impacts. But that one, everyone had thought it was one of our normal flash flood warnings that come and go, and we'll be okay in a few hours. But that one was very significant, and
Yeah.
everyone knows the impacts.
Pretty serious. Yeah.
Yeah. So other things that affect us, we can get high surf, coastal inundation, erosion, um, not only from surf itself, but at times when it's combined with elevated tides. People hear the term king tides, but those kind of events are a concern to us. Things that we track. Um, Other items kind of can be a hybrid between natural and human caused. So, for example, infectious disease. Um, you know, Something like a pandemic flu is natural, but there's a human component because it's spread human to human and by humans traveling. So if you look at like the COVID-19 pandemic, that is one area that we did have plans on the books to address pandemic flu and disease outbreaks, but nothing of that magnitude. But we had to pivot and pulled in the right team and did our best to manage that. Another one that I could mention is climate change, which is identified in our multi-hazard mitigation and resilience plan. But to tell you the truth, it is not considered a primary response area for KEMA. So we are more managing the consequences because what we see from climate change is increased occurrence of these significant and extreme weather events. So more heavy rainfall, stronger storms, what have you. But we do have people nationwide, statewide, and even in Kauai County, such as our persons in our planning department, embedded person with a Sea Grant, who do address more specifically climate change.
Sure.
So people will ask about the seismic risk to Kauai, and from the scientific data that we've gotten, Kauai is rated at low seismic risk. However, other counties in the state, most notably in the eastern half of the state, have a much higher seismic risk. So of earthquakes on the Big Island, sometimes closer to Maui, and you may recall the Kiholo Bay earthquake that resulted in significant impacts to the other counties, but not much here, except, and this is where the viewers should take note. You know, significant significant earthquake in state has a chance of generating a locally generated tsunami. So we have to be aware of that, and we are monitoring, as well as our partners at the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center. Travel time will be very limited for an in-state or locally generated tsunami, 45 minutes, give or take, to first impact on Kauai.
Because, of course, if a tsunami originates close by,
Yep.
then you don't have that much time to predict it. There it is, and it's coming.
Yeah, exactly why. It's one thing if it's around the rim of the Pacific, 4.5 hours from the Aleutians, 12 plus hours from Chile, etc. In-state is much closer. But Kiholo Bay earthquake, we did not have a tsunami, but we did have related impacts in that telecom went down, banking system, ATMs, many things that are housed on Oahu didn't work. So, at least for a few hours, we were affected with secondary effects. So, something to note about earthquake hazards.
Yeah.
Now,
something to keep
I know
in
you
mind.
asked me about natural disasters, but as an all hazards agency, I have to talk about other potential threats. So, we have a human caused spectrum, things like hazardous materials and hazardous materials incidents. There's always the cyber and information technology area, biological incidents related to hazmat, acts of terrorism. So, we are truly an all hazards agency, and we look at um, all possible threats. Part of your question also was how KEMA prepares for these various threats. So for the viewing audience, let me say that there are four traditional phases of emergency management, and in no particular order because they do overlap. There's preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. So those are our four main steps. In the preparedness phase, that's a lot of front end stuff. So we do a lot of planning. So plan development, updating, refinement, enhancement. And there are multiple levels of plans from this all-encompassing emergency operation plan to our mitigation plan. We have threat-specific annexes, or some people call their documents an SOP or an SOG, or a response checklist, um, all the way down to incident action plans for specific activation, specific incident. So that's the planning side of preparedness. We also do a lot of training and exercises for our responders and partner agencies. So we have a very active and robust training and exercise program, making sure skills are current, kept sharpened, and through exercises, we test those skills and any plans that are associated with whatever exercise we're doing. We also do a lot of public outreach, trying to educate the public through various means. We have an active grant management program where KEMA manages funding that is used to help us prepare or mitigate or recover from potential threats, disasters. Um, I think other areas of preparedness is that we try to maintain a multi-spectrum operational readiness. So people may not realize this, but uh, KEMA houses a lot of different things and systems, and Emergency Operations Center or EOC readiness, having that, make sure we have the latest updates, redundant communications, internet, redundant power, um, having all of those always at the ready, because really you can't allow that to fail, takes a lot of work. We house the county's public safety radio system, an 800 megahertz digital trunk system that is used by police, fire, and other partner entities. And that is a system that we continually have tried to upgrade, harden, and keep current. So that is also considered preparedness phase, but it becomes in very useful in response. We have a list of facilities that people may be more familiar with the term shelter, but we're transitioning to the term refuge area or best available refuge area because that's the standard to which our shelter facilities have been assessed. Um, so many areas of preparedness even gets into under I mentioned grant management, how we equip our first responders and other partner entities and their personnel. You know, County funding only goes so far, so we supplement and try to augment capabilities and local funding by leveraging grant funding and improving our capabilities that way. And all of that is under preparedness. So how we would prepare for some of those threats we discussed.
All right. Well, that is a fantastic and thorough answer, and I would expect nothing less from the KEMA administrator. I guess your whole job description is thoroughness. It seems like you're always planning, always thinking ahead, always thinking what can we do to better be ready um, when what hits the fan. And so that's good to know. We've got you protecting us. What about us, though? What are some steps that residents, regular guys like me, can take to be better prepared for emergencies like hurricanes, floods, tsunamis, or some of the human-caused emergencies that you mentioned?
So that's an excellent question. So one thing my staff and I will regularly say when we do outreach, community engagement, even stakeholder engagements, is that emergency and disaster preparedness and resilience really start at the individual and household levels. It's everyone's business, everyone's kuleana. Government alone, KEMA alone, is not the answer or the savior to all things. It really does take a village, or what FEMA and KEMA calls the whole community approach. Um, for residents, uh, yourself, um, it starts with an awareness, self-education of the various hazards and threats that you may encounter or experience in areas in which each of us lives, works, and plays or recreates. Um, Understanding those threats, identifying, and then taking measures that can hopefully lessen or mitigate your risk and vulnerability is a good starting point. Um, let's take simple example. If we're going to have a high wind event or tropical cyclone, securing or removing loose items from your yard. If you have the means, protecting your home, your windows from impact, putting up some kind of screen. If you can do hurricane clips on your home, all of that kind of stuff will improve your ability to shelter in place if you choose to do that. But there's more. Um, all residents, we recommend everyone maintain or prepare and maintain emergency or disaster kit. Remember that 14-day supply of non-perishable food, water, toiletries, medications. If you have, very young children, like you need diapers or pet supplies, what have you, battery-powered radio, flashlight, all of those things in your disaster kit. And our website and the HAIMA website has good guides on what you can use or put in your kit. In addition, everyone should um, create a family plan for what you will do in case of disasters. It's just as long, it's good so that everyone's on the same page about what you're going to do. If you're going to go anywhere, where are you going to go? Are you going to shelter in place? Are you going to go to a nearest refuge area? Are you going to shelter with friends? What have you? Of course, if you live, work, or frequent tsunami evacuation zone and there's a tsunami warning, the quickest path to higher ground. Or if you have many hours to get out, you do want to make your exit in good time, well before you're at risk of impacts or before the highway system is shut down or roadblocks and what have you. But yeah, stay informed, educate yourselves, have a plan. And one more very important thing, and we'll talk about this in more detail later, but another thing is to make sure that everyone has multiple means of notification. What I mean is, people will say, oh, sirens. Sirens is just one of many tools that we have at our disposal. There are the federal emergency alert system, the TV and radio cut-ins. TV and radio is not on. How am I going to know? Well, you can purchase a radio that'll self-activate with the EAS signal, and then you can hear what the emergency transmission is. Even if you're not in range of a siren, the radio will go off and you'll know. There are various emergency notification apps for smartphones, and you can get that in your app store. Our local news stations, for the most part, have their own apps that they support and sponsor, and people can go and subscribe to those. So again, you want more than one means of notification, though we will do our best to utilize appropriate means of notification for each disaster. So for example, people may remember their smartphones going off with the what's called the WIA or wireless emergency alerts message for flash flood or Kaua'i evacuation when you had that brush fire. So that's a system that KEMA can utilize, and we have very quick access to that federal system. You may get the county calls of the county's WEN system, wireless emergency notification system. And that goes to landline phones, and if you opt in, subscriber cell phones, emails, and text message notifications. But again, multiple means of notification, so you're aware when threats arise.
That's good. That's good. You got to plan for system redundancy because, if in an emergency situation, likely part of what makes it an emergency is that it has the potential to be destructive.
Yep.
So, I think everyone on Kauai is familiar with getting woken up in the middle of the night by that flash flood warning. All right, so we've talked about what role the government plays. We've talked about what role the individual plays. What role do local businesses and or schools play in disaster preparedness, and how do you guys collaborate with them?
Okay, that's another great question. I mean, you've heard me repeatedly say that we take this whole community approach to emergency management. And again, as that indicates, it's the whole of the community. Um, Private sector, businesses, and our educational institutions both play significant roles, and we do engage with them regularly and frequently. Um, we do this through various means. Like, for example, um, we will engage business associations, the local chamber of commerce. Um, we oftentimes have pre-established working groups, and I'll just give you one example. Our Department of Water, utility provider, they convene a working group that consists of other utility providers, energy providers, and telecom industry. So they will engage on the front end, make sure everyone's contact information is up to date, make sure everyone knows each other so that we aren't meeting for the first time when disaster strikes and they're walking into the emergency operations center. So we do a lot of that. We work very closely with the schools. We have our staff participate in or monitor school drills. We do outreach in the schools to a limited extent because we can't possibly hit every single school, every single class, but we do our best. And then our relationship with the complex area superintendent here at the district office is very tight. In fact, what's our most frequent activation here on Kauai? What do you think?
Oh, it would have to be for heavy rain, I would say.
Flash flood warning. And it's normally because of the Hanalei watershed. And that affects Hanalei school. So automatic, frequent response and pre and post coordination with the Department of Education. So businesses and DOE play a role. Now, I will say that it may appear to many people that government and KEMA's interaction with private sector or local businesses tends to focus around what is seen as critical infrastructure providers, but really every business, every entity is kuleana. What we highly recommend is that all businesses, regardless of your sector, type of work you do, what have you, everyone create some kind of emergency plan. Some people call it an emergency action plan or EAP for their business. Others will look at continuity of operations plan or a COOP or a business continuity plan. And those will ensure that you can sustain your operations, and particularly if it's an area that the community relies on that service or that capability, you can help all of us by being ready. So you have business readiness, and also ensure that your personnel or your staff, your associates, are well versed as far as emergency preparedness for not only the business but also for their families. And because they're not going to be able to support you at work if they're not ready at home. So these are all good things that the business community can assist with.
All right.
Well, that's the end of part one. Thanks for watching. Tune in next month for part two of my interview with Elton Ushio. Elton, thanks so much for coming in, and thanks to all the folks at the County of Kauai that make this show possible. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, all that jazz. And stay tuned for other great shows like the Hawike Weekly, the Weekly Council Updates, and Talkin' Trash. I'll see you next month. Aloha.